From the time vortex scarred plains of Dominaria, it's Draw 7 Resolve Mulligans Concede. And this week on Draw 7 Resolve Mulligans Concede, the crew's away, and so the rest of us will play some Vintage. And I'm here with a couple of awesome co-hosts who know way more about Vintage than I do. So on my left is
Jeremy White.
Jerry, you can actually get up more on that mic again.
Jeremy White back again.
Back again to talk about Eternal formats by popular demand. You were popular last time, and people actually were like, "You didn't talk about Vintage," and I was like, "Oh, there was no time." And they were like, "Well, make the time," and so we did. And also to talk about Vintage, because I don't know anything about Vintage, is
Kayda Vian.
Welcome, Kayda. And Kayda and Jeremy are both part of the Vintage community here in Victoria, which is a relatively new advent.
Yeah, somewhat new. Yeah.
It's
new to Victoria.
New to Victoria.
Not to Magic.
Right. No. Yeah. Vintage, correct. Not a new thing with regard to like the overall Magic community, but here in Victoria, even Legacy wasn't played in very much until the last like year and a half or so. So
it's been going for like 3 years.
But yeah, you two have both been very involved in it since basically the inception, which has been awesome. Mm-hmm. We have something that we do here on Draw 7 Resolve Mulligans Concede, and that is we roll this die, and then it tells us one of these packages to open. So, Jared, why don't you roll the die? 18. Ooh, we're going deep. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Vision Futura. Kayda, do you want to open this pack of
Yes.
Spanish Future
Future Sight? Oh, this looks terrifying. I'm not going to be able to identify anything from this pack.
Oh, man.
I was not back into Magic when Future Sight came back, so...
Do I go one by one?
Yeah, we're going to go one by one, starting with the commons. And,
oh my gosh, I can't open it.
Package design has changed over time, and I've actually discovered that, like... Japanese packs and Russian packs and whatnot, they all open differently.
They are different.
Are these the ones where the rares are at the front?
I have no idea. If you see a rare, then cheat it.
So this is... I don't speak this language.
Okay. You can go by collector number if you have no idea what the card is, or you can show it to the rest of us. I don't recognize that card.
To show it to the camera too?
This card. This is the super... This was like one of the best cards in this format.
Collector number...
Collector number 138. Fungal Sprouting, I think.
Fungal Sprouting. I remember there being like a deck based on this.
Yeah, you put a 1/1 into play. It has Convoke, and it has Buyback.
It's a Sprout Swarm.
Sprout Swarm, that's the one.
Close, yeah.
Yeah, this was like a slam dunk first pick in this format.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Just to clarify, you put like a Saproling into play?
Yeah, you put a 1/1 into play, but it has the spell has Convoke.
Right.
And Buyback.
So you can just keep on like buying it back by tapping 4 creatures over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, next up.
Corona del Oblio.
Corona del Oblio.
Yes, it's in something.
It's an enchantment. Collector number 73.
By the art, I'm assuming it is a crown of some sort. It has the keyword Lampo.
It's the Oblivion Crown.
Okay.
It's got flash.
Oh.
So it's an enchantment aura. Enchant creature, flash. Enchanted creature has discard a card. This creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn.
Okay, that seems stone unplayable.
Yep.
It's an aura
Real bad.
that costs you even more cards than it otherwise would.
You don't want to get 2 for 1. You want to get 3 for 1.
Absolutely.
Or more.
Next up is Trotasale. It's a creature. 3/4 worm. With
Collector number 14. Looks like a sandworm of some sort. It has some sort of ability.
That is the Salt Skitter.
Salt Skitter. So it's actually running around in salt. It's not It's like a dune worm, but it lives in salt. And it has a bunch of text on it.
Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, exile Salt Skitter. Return Salt Skitter to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it runs away.
Yeah, it's what's he called? The red legendary guy.
Yeah, Norin the Wary.
It's Norin the Wary, right?
That costs 4.
Exactly.
It isn't a human.
Right. And doesn't have any of the advantages that Norin the Wary otherwise has.
Correct.
Doesn't run away from spells though, I guess. So that's
true.
Yeah.
That's true. Still not very good in limited.
Yeah. Kayda, what else we got?
Infiltrato Ilcor.
Ooh, I think I might know what this is.
Might be Infiltrator Ilcor.
And
It has Shadow and Suspend 2. And it's a 3/1.
Yeah. A card that we can basically entirely interpret. This card seems fine.
That card's pretty good.
Like Suspend 2 for 2. I think this is pretty much a slam dunk actually. I think you absolutely want to play this card because you get a
limited,
clock.
definitely.
You get a clock and you can like just suspend it on turn 2 and then it gets disgusting later on.
Yeah. Yeah, that card's pretty good.
All right, what's up?
Tagliagoli Ildal.
I think this is Drifter Ildal.
It's possible. Regardless, it has a collector's number of 64. And it has Determinazione.
Cutthroat Ildal.
Cutthroat Ilda.
Hellbent.
Hellbent.
It has Shadow as long as you have no cards in your hand.
I prefer the Infiltrator Ilcor to this card
Certainly.
significantly.
Yes. Yes.
Next up.
Predoni Gathan. Also a creature with Morph.
Ooh.
Oh, this one I know. It is Gathan Raiders. It has Morph. Its unmorphing cost is discard 2 cards. It has Hellbent and gets +2/+2 if you're Hellbent.
So you play this card on turn 3 and then flip it up on turn 4, discarding 2 cards. And then when you inevitably run out of cards, it becomes a giant 5/5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty playable.
That's kind of cool. I still like our previous 2 more playable cards more than this card. But,
Certainly.
yeah.
Certainly.
Sporoloth Lantico.
Sporoloth Ancient.
Aha!
This card was in Modern Masters.
Yeah, we saw this card more recently. And this is the one... Which one is this? Is this the one that can do 2 things?
I think this is the one that does 2 things.
So he gets a spore counter at the beginning of every upkeep. I know that.
And then I think he makes it so that you can remove less spore counters from your other guys, maybe?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's other funguses get remove 2 spores to create a 1/1 instead of remove 3. That is my guess. Paul says correct.
Excellent.
Good.
Raspa Tombe. I'm not sure. Looks pretty cool.
It's another future shifted border.
Yeah, this card has Madness, I believe.
It's collector number 86, and it is it has the keyword Folia.
I think it's...
It is a Grave Scrabbler.
Grave Scrabbler.
And he has Madness, 1 and a black. If you discard this card, you may cast it for its Madness cost instead of putting it in its graveyard. And when he enters the battlefield, if the Madness cost was paid, you may return target creature card from a graveyard to its owner's hand.
Ooh,
That's right.
It's got a little Gravedigger power.
Madness Gravedigger.
So that this goes really well with the Raiders that we saw earlier.
Yeah,
you can discard this
definitely.
guy to them, and then Gravedigger something, and then get disgusting with it.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Campo Luminatrama. It looks like it's a enchantment with Morph. Just judging by what I know of. I'm so bad.
It is. Yeah, it definitely has Metamorphosi.
Yes.
And its collector's number is 25. It is a white Incantesimo, which I assume is enchantment. I think you're correct.
Yep. It is a Lumithread Field. For 1 and a white, creatures you control get +0/+1, and its morph is also 1 and a white.
This card seems like it could be Trixie in combat.
Yeah.
It's a 2/2 that you can turn into an anthem. So suddenly all your guys
it's +0/+1.
right. So suddenly all your guys don't trade when you expected them to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Which is significant.
Could be good.
Yeah.
Next one is Tramutante Mesmerico.
Mesmeric.
Please forgive my pronunciation.
I am not sure.
It looks terrifying.
It's a creature.
The art is super cool.
It is number 53. I think it is a
The-
shapeshifter.
Mesmeric Sliver.
Mesmeric Sliver. Oh, okay.
It's a sliver.
And all slivers have, when this permanent comes into play, you may Fate Seal 1.
Boom. For 4. Okay, great.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Coming into the uncommons, it's Rati della Fortezza.
Rati della Fortezza. Oh, I know this. Stronghold Rats?
Yeah, you're right. 79.
It has Ombra, which I think might be Shadow.
Yep. Shadow, and whenever Stronghold Rats deals combat damage to a player, each player discards a card.
Oh yeah, this card was fun in EDH.
You're one of those people.
I played this EDH rat deck that was all about like emptying everyone's hands, like getting everyone to discard everything, and then casting Living Death and seeing what happened. Hint: I also usually would have like a black ley line to exile everyone else's graveyards.
Yes.
Yes.
Symmetrical.
Uncommon too.
Vestigia del Darkmoor.
More salvage. It's a land, comes into play tapped for black, has dredge too.
Right. So if this card gets destroyed, you can dredge it back in your hand.
Or it's also nice in the dredge deck because that way, when you're dredging, if you already have a pretty reasonable graveyard, you can dredge back a land and play it. So that you can start doing more things.
More dredgy things. All right. And our third uncommon.
Is a Kifkin.
Uh-huh.
Lavativo della Praterie Brumosa.
Wow. That's quite the title.
It's a mouthful, for sure.
Can't remember what this card does.
He's got wide eyes.
27, Paul.
He's got a sickle. No, he's got a scythe.
Scythe, yeah.
Yeah, he's straight up scythe.
It is the Mist Meadow Skulk.
Does he have a converted mana cost of 3? Oh, something about
2.
2.
converted mana cost higher than 3.
Lifelink, and he has protection from converted mana cost 3 or greater.
That thing.
Yeah, I remember this card.
Potentially relevant in Modern, now that I think about it. All right, Kayda, what is our rare from Future Sight? Is it green?
It is not green.
Oh, that's too bad.
Nihilith.
That's the same as it is in English.
Nihilith?
Yeah. It has fear, suspend 7 for 1 and a black.
4/4.
4/4, and you can do something to make it come out faster.
Like sacrifice a creature or something?
I think it might be sacrifice a permanent. I remember they played this card in Restore Balance in Modern.
So it's got, fear, suspend 7, and for 1 and a black. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if it is suspended, remove a time counter from it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
actually pretty good.
Yes.
Like that card seems excellent because just if your card, no matter what your opponent plays, stuff's going in their yard.
Yeah.
And is there a foil?
There is.
Ooh.
Corsair Nessia.
Oh, Nessian
Full art.
Corsair.
Nessian Corsair, full art.
It's standard playable.
Definitely.
Sweet.
Yeah,
It's very pretty.
it is. Yeah, I really like these full art Future Sight cards, actually. They were very cool. I would love to see full art creatures show up again, full art vanilla creatures.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. So we've talked about this pack. Oh, what are we taking from this pack? I figure
Spread Swarm.
it sounds like Sprout Swarm is the thing. But the rare is actually quite good. I think that to my mind, the rare seems excellent.
It is pretty good, yeah.
my only experience with playing with suspend stuff has been Modern Masters, but the suspend cards in Modern Masters were very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, great. So, but our actual purpose today is to talk about Vintage, and I know basically nothing about Vintage, so I thought we could maybe start by talking about how the Magic tournament formats, and I talked about this with Graham on the podcast like a couple of years ago, but sort of the origin of Magic's tournament formats, how that has happened over the years. So, like when we started, you would go to a Magic tournament, and
Yeah.
I remember doing that.
Type 1.
Right. Well,
Even before Type 1.
even before
I guess.
Type 1, it was just you'd go to play Magic, and eventually that separated in two.
Yes.
Right. So you had, I guess before that, they realized that allowing people to play with 40 card decks and play with as many copies of any card as they wanted was
Bad News Bears.
was not a good thing. And so they implemented a restricted list on Magic.
Yeah.
And there were certain cards that were put on that restricted list basically immediately, specifically the Power 9. And then certain other ones that were
some anti cards, Contract from Below.
Yeah. Were the anti cards were just straight banned, I think, in tournaments. But
Originally?
I think so. I think the idea was you didn't play for anti in tournaments, just period.
Right.
The catch was that they were really trying to be conscious of the fact that people had spent all this money on these cards, and they wanted to let people play with the cards that they had. So they weren't willing to outright ban a card unless it did not work in the tournament format. So they just restricted them. And so you only got to play with one. And eventually they got to a point where a couple of years in where people couldn't afford to build decks anymore because there were basically to play a deck of Magic cards. If you were brand new, you couldn't just put down $20 anymore and get a deck that you could play in a tournament. You needed more. So that was the invention of that's when they invented Type 2. And Type 2 was just the last couple of years worth of cards.
Yeah.
And then eventually, after that had happened for a little while, there was the advent of Type 1.5.
Extended.
No, that's Legacy.
Yeah, Legacy.
Because Type 1.5 was like, we're going to not let you play any of the original Type 1.5 was sort of like, it wasn't even Wizards running it. It was sort of like a group of people who were like, we'll invent this tournament format and we'll play it ourselves. And it was just Type 1, but anything that was on the restricted list was banned.
Yeah.
And eventually they added more and created its own banned list, and then that became Legacy. And then there's also Extended and Modern and things like that have been sort of other formats that have been introduced over time afterwards. But those are sort of the core three, was Type 1, which is now called Vintage, Type 2, which is now called Standard, and Type 1.5, which is now called Legacy. So let's talk about Vintage, because we've addressed Legacy on the podcast before. We've addressed Modern and Standard on the podcast before. We've never addressed Vintage. What has Vintage become since then?
So Vintage has become it's a very tough format to get into in paper. It recently has spiked a lot online. It's a very fast, hyper interactive format. And what I mean by hyper interactive is that you need to be doing things that interact with your opponent or extremely progress your game plan on turns 1 and 2, ideally turn 1.
Okay. Can you give an example?
So, for example, one of the best decks in the format is a Prison deck, and their ideal turn 1 play is Mishra's Workshop, tap it. It taps for 3 mana, but only to cast artifact spells, and then they will play a Trinisphere, which stops their opponent from playing anything on their first 2 turns, probably.
Right. Stops them from playing anything, even zero-cost things like Moxen and Lotuses and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, and I haven't played any Vintage like ever, but I've watched some, and it's absolutely insane to watch, because I will see one player like do a ton of stuff on their turn. They'll play 3 cards and destroy their opponent's entire board, and like end up with like 5 or 6 creatures on the board, one of which is a Bob, and I'm like, okay, their opponent can never come back from this. And their opponent like immediately turns around, casts Ancestral Recall, draws 3 more cards, plays 5 more things, kills their opponent's entire board, and that is basically how that goes.
Yeah, like because with Vintage you have access to, you know, recall and time walk and everything like that. It becomes a really explosive format. Mm-hmm. So you could, you know, think you're sitting there with absolutely nothing. You draw and you just all of a sudden dump your hand, and then it's kind of like it's really back and forth when Jeremy says it's very interactive. So and that's kind of where that comes in, is like everything could be wiped, but then all of a sudden you're sitting with the board side or your side of the board just like dominating everything.
Yeah. So I mean, sorry, my phone just made a really strange noise. It was like 3 noises on top of each other. It is now on silent, and I apologize. So like when I was a kid, because I played Magic for a while during sort of like around the time 1.5 was coming in, and I thought that was great because I couldn't afford any of the power. Power was already expensive at that point, but the sort of urban legend at that point was to make a Type 1 deck. You look at the restricted list and you put everything on that list in your deck, and you play with that. How realistic is that?
Depends what kind of deck you want to play. I have 2 Vintage decks built in paper. One of my decks is a Ancient Ziggurat control deck, which is a creature control deck. It plays a lot of the hate bears you see from modern and legacy decks.
And a hate bear, just to
elaborate, is a creature that not only has power and toughness, but ideally stops your opponent from doing something, such as Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
She's sort of the iconic hate bear at this point.
Spirit of the Labyrinth. In that deck, the only power it plays 4 Moxen and Lotus. And if you don't have a Lotus, the deck is very playable. So.
Mm-hmm. And I also find it interesting that, you know, regardless of the fact that it contains power and stuff like that, that deck, because you ported it back to Legacy and played it there, so I've played a little bit with it.
Yeah,
and it feels a lot like a Legacy or a Modern deck in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I ported it back to Legacy, and I think it has 62 of the same 75 as the Vintage version. The lands are changed around a bit, and I added some Trigon Predators for Vintage. Yeah. But
how do you so if I wanted to play Vintage in Victoria, I guess my first question is, I don't have power.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just a lot in the way of the cards that I would need. Is it actually possible to play Vintage if you are a person who does not have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in Magic cards?
Totally.
Definitely. I've organized a full proxy Vintage league with we play for prizes. There's no set day. You play round robin against everybody in the league and figure out prizes at the end. There's lots of 15 proxy Vintage tournaments, and 15 proxies is a lot in 75. That can probably save you $10,000 on your Vintage deck. And you can play almost anything, especially if you already have a Legacy collection.
And these aren't just like local tournaments that you know you might run at YJ or that.
Yeah, no, like these are huge tournaments that people travel for with real power as prizes that are 15 proxy.
There's also and also a lot of tournaments, collector's edition and international edition are legal.
Yeah. So collectors, do you want to just explain what those are actually, Kayda?
So those are editions that in big tournaments in the past where is it top 8 or winning decks that get the cards are made, but they're not technically tournament legal.
Yeah. So there's a few different ones here. So those are the the pro, what were they even called? Like the Pro Tour decks, which were gold borders, and they had black backs. But there's also international and collectors were like full box like versions of beta that were put out between beta and unlimited that were like the entire set in one box. And so those obviously have lotuses and things like that in them. But yeah, the Pro Tour ones and whatnot as well are also legal. So if you are able to play those and you're able to play proxies, you can also get a lot of your dual lands and fetch lands and whatever taken care of from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other way that I've seen you guys play Vintage is VRD. Do you want to maybe delve a little bit into what VRD is?
So VRD stands for Vintage Rotisserie Draft. I've hosted 3 now at my house. A rotisserie draft is a draft where you have a subset of cards. You have 8 people. They each have 45 picks, and you snake draft the cards, which means that the first pick has first and 16th pick, and 8th pick has 8th and 9th pick. So it snakes around the draft. So it's not too disadvantageous to be 8th.
So do you literally have every card in Magic in a box in front of you and like go through and take cards out, or is this?
No. And I was gonna go on. And so a vintage rotisserie draft is a rotisserie draft with the vintage banned list. So you can draft almost any card ever printed in Magic. And the way we do it is we have a spreadsheet online, and everyone's in the same room. We usually have 1 or 2 computers, and with 1 or 2 people updating the spreadsheet with everyone's picks. And then we have somebody in a different room pulling out the cards from my collection.
Gotcha.
To complete everyone's deck.
And once one card has been drafted, it's out. So Jeremy drafts Black Lotus. It comes to my turn. I can't draft Black Lotus because it's gone.
Correct.
Right. So 1 copy of every card. It's like a cube draft, but the cube is Magic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's probably the most fun I've had playing Magic in a long time.
And what kind of decks do you actually get out of that?
Everything under the sun.
Yeah, you can draft anything. Some people go in planning to draft a specific archetype. At our last draft, we had somebody try and draft an Infect deck, and so he knew going in he was going to draft Infect. And then there are other people that try and react to the draft, take what's open, try and draft any type of counterspell deck they can, and just get a few win conditions, whatever they can muster.
And it's funny because you could be on one plan and it could be going great. And then all of a sudden somebody drafts, like say you're going on a mono black plan, which happened to me. Then come about, it was 5th or 6th pick. Or person in the first seat goes Dark Ritual, him to Torak. And I'm like, well, so now I'm going to switch my plan up. So you can go in with a set plan of what you're going to do. Then a little thing sets it off and you're in a total different plan. And I ended up being a Flash Hulk deck, which is a combo, which...
You can explain the combo.
Yeah. Oh, man. So it's a combo that uses the card Flash, which is a blue instant, which says... He's pulled it up. I can't remember what exactly it says. And it combos with Protean Hulk.
So, Paul, do you want to...
So the Flash is just the put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield. If you do, sacrifice it unless you pay its mana cost reduced by up to 2.
Right. So
it's the source of the Flash keyword, really.
Right. And the catch with that is that it does put it onto the battlefield, but then you have to sacrifice it.
Yeah.
So if you use it with Protean Hulk...
Which says, search your library for any number of cards up to power of 6.
6 converted mana
6 converted mana cost. Which then you would search for some sort of sack outlet. And what mine in this deck was Murderous Redcap and Carrion Feeder. So then, and Malira.
Yeah. So basically you search for an infinite sacrifice combo where you can infinitely sacrifice something to do damage to your opponent and kill them that way.
Yeah. So it's a multi-card combo, which I ended up drafting after I botched my mono black plan.
Yeah.
Jared, do you have any specific like deck building tales for VRD that are of interest?
Well, in the draft I was in the first one we hosted, and then I just sort of was behind the scenes running the last two. I drafted a Time Vault deck, and I had a pick order sheet, and I think I got 43 of 45 of my first 45 picks.
Nice.
So I only had to deviate for 2 picks. So I got pretty much everything I wanted.
Nice. Yeah, Time Vault. Even when I was in elementary school playing Magic, and they like Time Vault was one of the power pieces that was like attainable. I think it was like worth $40 when I was a kid. Like it was theoretically something that you could get, and I think one of my friends actually had one. And so the combo with Time Vault was Time Vault plus Animate Artifact to turn it into a creature, plus Instill Energy, which is a green aura that allows you to untap a creature once per turn for nothing. So you would put that on your Time Vault and then take infinite turns.
It's gotten slightly better now with Voltaic Key, Tezzeret the Seeker, Ralzeric.
Yeah, so you've got
Even Galvanic Key too.
yeah.
Not as good, but it still works.
Yeah, there's many more playable ones. The most notable one is Voltaic Key.
Yeah, I mean, once you've started taking infinite turns, there's limited amounts of things your opponent can do, regardless of whether you're tapping 1 or 4 mana per turn to take extra turns.
True.
How many to what extent does Vintage devolve into just combo decks that win on turn 1?
There's actually very few combo decks that win on turn 1. There's Storm is the most notable one, but there's a bunch of different ways you can build Storm. You can build an all-in Storm deck with some hand attack that's built to go off as soon as possible, and that deck can turn 1 maybe a third of the time, and usually it's just going and hoping you have nothing.
Yeah.
If you have a Force of Will or a Mind Break Trap, they probably lose. And then you can build a Storm deck that's slower, relies on Gush, Fast Bond, Yawgmoth's Will more to try and just overwhelm your opponent,
Gotcha. So
and has counter spells to back it up.
just in that case, gosh, all those cards that you mentioned are cards that will get you a whole bunch of extra cards.
Yeah, it's just an engine. So Gush is a card. It's a 5 mana instant. It has an alternative cost of returning 2 islands, and it draws you 2 cards. And so with Fast Bond in play, you can float 2 mana, return 2 islands, and replay them that same turn with Fast Bond. So Gush is both a ritual, which nets you mana, because you can float the mana, cast Gush for nothing, and then replay the lands. So it nets you 2 mana and 2 cards.
And then if you have Yawgmoth's Will,
It lets you cast Gush again from your graveyard, and you can cast it for the alternate cost from your graveyard again.
infinitely.
Not
until you
infinite.
run out of life.
It gets exiled.
Oh, does it? Okay, right.
Because
Yeah.
Yawg Will exiles other cards. But usually you get through your deck before
Yeah.
that's relevant.
Sorry, I'm thinking Yogg's Will and Lotus, which is legit infinite.
No, because Yawgmoth's Will reads if it's a sorcery, 2 and a black. If a card would go, it lets you cast all the cards in your graveyard when you cast it, as though they were in your hand.
Oh, but if a card would go to your graveyard, you
Yeah.
But if a card would go to your graveyard after Yawgmoth's Will resolves, you exile it.
Gotcha.
Broken, but it's not that broken.
Okay, well that is something.
Yeah. So it's not like an easy I win button. You do have to have some setup, but it's not hard.
So like, what is built into the format to stop people from comboing off like that? Because certainly, if you know Magic, you know that there are a lot of ways to actually do that to win on turn 1.
Definitely.
Like how does the format sort of balance against that?
So the format balances against that by, as I said, the fastest turn 1 deck, which is Storm, probably only turn 1's a third of the time. So you usually get a first turn,
Well,
which
that's
is
something.
good. But if
Two-thirds of the time.
if you're on the draw and your storm opponent is going for it, you basically have to have Force of Will or Mind Bake Trap to stop them.
Mental Misstep? My one of Mental Misstep?
Mental Misstep works sometimes.
And it's unrestricted, so you can play 4.
Oh, really? I thought it was restricted.
No, Mental Misstep is unrestricted. Force of Will is unrestricted.
There are some interesting cards on the vintage restricted list, though. I'm thinking specifically of Brainstorm, Ponder, and Preordain.
Not Thirst for Knowledge.
Preordain is not.
Preordain's not?
No.
Oh.
Preordain
Ponder and
is-
Brainstorm are, though.
Ponder and Brainstorm are both restricted.
Yeah.
Preordain you can play 4.
Why?
They're the best 2, and I guess they deemed that Preordain is okay in vintage, but not in modern.
But yeah, I mean, like these are cards that just allow you to set up your draws really.
Yeah,
well.
the reason the most powerful cantrips are restricted in vintage is because cantrips scale in greatness with the relative power of the other cards in your deck.
Right.
So if you're cantripping into, say, Siege Rhino, Whip of Erebos, Courser of Krufix in standard, they're probably okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to set up your draws is still good, but, that's not too powerful. But if you're brainstorming and you have 2 lands in hand, and then you get to go Black Lotus, Demonic Tutor, Yawgmoth's Will,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. Yeah, so...
And in that case, Brainstorm just turns into Recall.
Right. Because
So-
You put 2 lands back,
Yeah.
draw 3 really, really good cards.
Yeah.
yeah. It's funny actually. We were talking a little after our podcast last week about the ban and restricted list a little bit more. Just slight digression, but just talking about cantrips and the other cards in your deck. We're talking about the Jace ban, and the fact that Jace the Mind Sculptor was banned. Okay, so was Stoneforge Mystic. Okay, but it occurred to me that Jace and Stoneforge were in standard at the same time, along with Ponder and Preordain.
And Lightning Bolt.
And Lightning Bolt, which was also there. And they suppressed Splinter Twin as a deck, Valakut, which was Scapeshift. Like a lot of the best decks in modern right now were all in standard at the same time, and were all oppressed by Jace.
Yes.
So yeah, it was kind of funny. Anyway, cool. So
Another thing that's I found interesting was with the recent banning that Wizards did, they unrestricted gifts. So I've been reading a lot of articles, just like people putting together gifts lists.
So gifts ungiven is Paul's got it up on screen right now. What is it? Define what a gifts list is trying to do.
Well, it's
They're so different.
there's
so many different
gifts
kinds.
is such an interesting card to play with, because I personally think it's one of the hardest cards in Magic to cast and to just to be on both sides of, because there's so many different scenarios, and the person who's casting it has a plan and a backup plan and a third plan for whatever you pick. And when you're casting it, you have to have all those. And I don't play that card for that specific reason. It's real hard, and also I'm more of a creature player. But just like some of the lists that I've been reading online, and I'm totally blanking on all of them, it's just really interesting to read about. And I'm really excited to play in a format where gifts is unrestricted, because I haven't been able to.
Well, one of the most interesting things about gifts is that when you cast it, your opponent has no idea what you have in hand. So, say you're playing a Reanimator deck with World Gorger Dragon, and you could have cards like Careful Study that discard cards from your hand. So if you go get World Gorger Dragon, Animate Dead,
And to be,
Ancestral Recall, and Black Lotus, they have no idea what to give you because they don't know what you have in your hand. They could give you World Gorger Dragon and bin your Animate Dead, not knowing you already have an Animate Dead and a Careful Study in hand.
yeah. To be clear, World Gorger Animate Dead is another combo.
Yeah, so the way that works is you Animate Dead, target World Gorger Dragon enters play, it exiles all your other permanents, you can float mana with your lands, and then it exiles the Animate Dead, so it goes back to the graveyard, the Animate Dead comes back, and all your lands do, you float mana. Ideally, you have a Bazaar of Baghdad in play, so you can get through your deck every time. And then eventually you win with all your floating mana and a Una Queen of the Fae to exile your opponent's entire library.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun
interactive,
cards.
You know.
I mean, like, I guess that's sort of the appeal to me of things like Vintage is that all these things can happen in Magic, but you never get to see them in a lot of formats. Like these crazy, bizarre things that used to. I mean, once upon a time, they actually were more what like Standard and whatnot revolved around, was like crazy backdoor ways of winning the game.
Yeah.
But it is kind of cool to see all these interactions.
The things that let you do it are the tutors, even though they're only one-ofs. Vampiric Tutor, Imperial Seal, Demonic Tutor. Those are the cards that, when you draw them, just mesh your hand together and let you do what you want to do. And they're the cards that aren't available to players in Legacy. And not only some of the enablers like the Moxen and Black Lotus that let you go fast, but also the tutors that let you just fix your hand into whatever you need it to be at the time.
Yeah, we get that in Victoria somewhat in Highlander as well.
Definitely.
Highlander is a very sort of tutor dependent format.
Very.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Highlander in Victoria did start out as Vintage Highlander, as another way that we were sort of experimenting with Eternal formats.
No ban list.
Yeah. Totally fair and awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been a good discussion. If people want to find out more about Vintage, I would recommend checking out the Vintage Super League.
Definitely.
Online.
It's so much fun to watch, especially since the quality of player in that tournament is so high.
To be clear as to what it is a bunch of top tier Magic players playing in a big Vintage tournament.
Hall of Famers and two of the best Vintage players ever, Rich Shea and Stephen Menendian.
And it is wonderfully produced and broadcast on Twitch. You can watch the rebroadcasts on YouTube and things like that.
Yeah, it's every Tuesday night, I believe, they stream live.
Yeah, and it's that's really good. So you should definitely check that out. The fact of the matter is that you can actually play Vintage online now much more easily than you can in paper. Those Vintage Masters cards came out and they are expensive, but they're not terribly expensive.
Well, compared to paper, they're real cheap.
Yeah.
They're probably 20% of what it costs to play online.
Even that, like, have they even did they even like really spike? Everyone was expecting them to really spike, and they've sort of been on a gradual uptick, but they haven't really.
The paper or the online?
The online.
Yeah, they haven't spiked that much. No.
So I mean, that is a way that you can actually legitimately play Vintage, and that's kind of cool that they've actually like allowed people to do that.
Yeah, I know lots of people are really excited for that.
Yeah. But beyond that, are there any like web resources or anything like that you would like look at for if people are interested in like
Eternals Central is a really good website. My friend hosts a Legacy podcast on there, but they also have a lot of Vintage content. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good website.
So is it Everyday Eternal as well?
That's the Legacy podcast.
Okay. The Mana Drain is a good forum.
Yeah, the Mana Drain is a really good forum.
And I guess also you can check out your local store and your local scene and see if there's anything actually going on there that could be run in the Vintage sphere. But yeah.
And
go ahead.
Even just like if you have like a group of people that want to play Vintage, they like, I want to cast super powerful spells and have a really fun game of Magic. Like, if you have a printer, it's accessible.
That's true. A printer is like $30.
Or some draft trash and a Sharpie. Like, it's just...
Would recommend a printer, but...
Yeah, but I mean...
It's true, actually. And that's something that I think has really made Legacy even possible in Victoria. I mean, like, Legacy didn't ever take off in Victoria in a big way until Proxy Legacy showed up on Saturdays.
That's true.
And... like, I mean, I like having real cards, but it is really cool that I can go every Saturday to YJ and play in like a 12-person tournament now, because people are able to make decks and people are able to try out different decks and things like that.
And that was the reasoning behind Proxy Legacy was like get people interested, get people out, and then slowly we've seen people build their decks, you know, trading in their standard stuff and getting their first dual land, or just slowly.
And we've had a bunch of people who started out fully proxy and within a year owned 75 cards of the deck they wanted to build.
Yeah.
And it's really good, especially if you have a few people in your community who have cards, who travel to tournaments, and who are available to loan extra cards they have, and really support the format that way. We've been really lucky, and we've had a few people like that, and they've really helped grow the community we've had.
I mean, the what we did with Legacy as well was sort of like, the idea was we would do proxy Legacy like 3 times a month, and then there would be like Legacy for staples once a month.
Yeah.
Ish. So like once a month there's like an only real cards tournament to it, which is higher stakes, but 3 times a month proxies are allowed. And there's no reason that you can't do that with like Vintage, or do something like the league that Jeremy and Kayda are both in.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Vintage League we were in was super fun. It was just with friends. It was full proxy, and that didn't take anything away from how much fun we were having playing Vintage.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Jer. Thank you for joining us, Kayda.
Thanks for having us.
This has been awesome. And next time that the crew are all away and we're allowed to talk about really old formats, then maybe I will call you back. But I might be in Vancouver. Oh no!
No.
Yes. Eternal draw 7, resolve mulligans concede might not happen again, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, thanks from all of us, and yes, we hope you enjoy your Eternal formats.